Move your heavy self out of the way, you
Stay away
cow.
from my husband.
You are scuffing my limited edition Gucci heels. The sharp point of a stiletto jammed into Keisha's swollen ankle. She did not even have time to scream before gravity took over. Her hands instinctively flew to her 7-month pregnant belly as she hit the polished marble floor of the Teterboro private jet terminal with a sickening thud. The water bottle she had been holding rolled away, leaking a small puddle onto the pristine tiles. Pain shot up her legs, but fear for her unborn baby seized her chest. She gasped for air, looking up from the ground, expecting to see shock or concern. Instead, she saw a phone camera lens. Tiffany, the woman who had just tripped her, was not checking if Keisha was hurt. She was checking her own reflection in her phone screen, adjusting her flawless makeup, while holding a Louis Vuitton bag that cost more than most people earned in a year. Oops. Tiffany giggled, but her eyes were cold and dead like a shark. You really should watch where you are going. Being pregnant makes you so clumsy and huge. It is honestly an eyesore. Keisha gritted her teeth, ignoring the burning pain in her ankle. She looked past the mistress to the man standing right next to her, her husband, Julian Thorne, the father of the child kicking inside her. Julian was wearing a navy bespoke suit that Keisha had ironed for him just that morning. He looked down at his wife sprawled on the floor, not with worry, but with pure irritation. Julian, Keisha whispered, reaching out a trembling hand. Please, help me up. I think I twisted something. Julian sighed. It was a loud, exaggerated sigh that echoed in the quiet VIP lounge. He stepped back, avoiding her reaching hand as if she were contagious. He pulled a silk handkerchief from his pocket. For a second, Keisha thought he might wipe the tears from her face. Instead, he bent down and carefully wiped a microscopic speck of dust from Tiffany's shoe. You are making a scene, Keisha. Julian said, his voice smooth and cold. Get up. You are embarrassing me in front of the staff. The cruelty of it slapped her harder than the fall. Keisha used a nearby chair to hoist herself up, wincing as weight put pressure on her injured ankle. She looked at the two of them standing there, the perfect power couple, and her, the pregnant wife in a simple cotton maternity dress and comfortable sneakers. Why is she here, Julian? Keisha asked, her voice gaining a little strength. You told me this was a solo business trip to close the deal with the Japanese investors. You said you needed focus. Is this your focus? Julian laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. He put his arm around Tiffany's waist, pulling her close. Tiffany smirked, resting her head on his shoulder and looking at Keisha with triumphant pity. Plans change, Keisha, Julian said, checking his diamond-encrusted watch. And frankly, I need someone on my arm who looks the part. Look at you. You look like a washerwoman. I am about to close a $50 million merger. I need elegance. I need sex appeal. I need Tiffany. You are just heavy. He reached into his leather briefcase. Keisha watched paralyzed as he pulled out a thick envelope. He did not hand it to her. He tossed it. The heavy manila envelope hit her chest and slid down to the floor, landing right in the puddle of spilled water. Those are divorce papers, Julian said casually, as if ordering a coffee. My lawyers drafted them this morning. I suggest you sign them quickly. The prenuptial agreement you signed 3 years ago is very clear. You leave with what you came with, which, as I recall, was absolutely nothing. Keisha stared at the wet envelope. The air in the room felt thin. 3 years of marriage. 3 years of supporting him while he built his fintech company from a garage startup to a Wall Street darling. 3 years of silence while she hid her true identity to ensure he loved her for her and not her last name. And this was the result. You are kicking me out, Keisha asked quietly. Now, while I am carrying your daughter. I am setting you free, Julian corrected with a sneer. And don't use the kid as leverage. I will pay the minimum child support required by the state, not a penny more. Now, if you will excuse us, we have a flight to catch. The pilot is waiting. He turned his back on her. The dismissal was absolute. Tiffany waved her fingers at Keisha, a mocking little goodbye. Bye-bye, Big Mama, Tiffany chirped. Try not to trip on your way out. Rage, hot and blinding, began to rise in Keisha's chest, but she pushed it down. Not yet. She needed to be safe first. She needed water. The shock was making her dizzy, and her throat felt like sandpaper. She limped toward the small coffee bar in the corner of the lounge. Her hands shook as she grabbed a bottle of water. She needed to hydrate and call a taxi. She just wanted to get away from these monsters. She placed the water on the counter. The barista, a young woman who had been watching the whole scene with wide eyes, looked uncomfortable. "That will be $8, ma'am," the barista said softly. Keisha reached into her purse and pulled out her credit card. The black card linked to Julian's main account, the account she had managed for him for years. She tapped it against the reader. Beep, declined. The machine flashed red. Keisha frowned. That was impossible. That account had over $2 million in liquid cash. She swiped it again. Beep, declined. Try this one. Keisha pulled out her backup card, her emergency card. Beep, declined. Behind her, a low chuckle made her freeze. She turned around. Julian had not left yet. He was standing by the glass doors, holding his phone up, showing his banking app. He tapped the screen and hit a button. "I blocked them," Julian said, smiling. "I blocked all of them, Keisha. Did you really think I would let you drain my hard-earned money on your way out? You are not spending another cent of my fortune." "Julian, that is illegal," Keisha said, her voice rising. "I have no cash. I am stranded at a private airport in New Jersey. How am I supposed to get home? How am I supposed to eat? Walk." Julian shrugged. "It might do you some good. Burn off some of that baby weight." He signaled to the security guard standing near the entrance, a tall, burly man who had been ignoring the conflict until his wealthy client beckoned him. "Officer," Julian called out, his voice commanding. "This woman is bothering us. She is attempting to use stolen credit cards. Please remove her from the premises immediately. I do not want her harassing my fiancé while we board." The security guard marched over. He did not look at Keisha's swollen belly. He did not look at the tears welling in her eyes. He only saw a black woman in cheap clothes arguing with a man in a $5,000 suit. Bias kicked in instantly. "Ma'am." The guard barked, stepping into Keisha's personal space. "You need to leave. Now." "I have not done anything wrong," Keisha said, backing up until her back hit the counter. "He is my husband. He just cut off my access. I just need water. I am feeling faint. I do not care about your domestic drama." The guard reached for his belt where a pair of handcuffs hung. "The owner of the account says the cards are stolen. That makes you a thief and a trespasser. This is a private terminal for ticketed passengers only. Are you flying today?" "No, but..." Keisha started. "Then get out." The guard grabbed her upper arm. His grip was tight, bruising. He began to drag her toward the automatic doors. "Let me go," Keisha cried out, trying to pull her arm back. "You are hurting me. Stop resisting," the guard shouted, escalating the situation. Across the room, Tiffany held up her phone again. She had started a live stream. The little red live icon was pulsing. "Oh my God, you guys," Tiffany said to her camera voice, feigning shock. "Look at this crazy woman attacking the security guard. This is what we have to deal with. Julian is just trying to take me on a romantic trip, and his psycho ex is literally fighting the police. This is so ghetto." Keisha could see the comments flying up on Tiffany's screen as the viewer count ticked up. "Throw her out. She looks deranged. Protect Julian. Why is she so aggressive?" The court of public opinion was already in session, and Keisha had been found guilty before she could speak a word. The guard shoved her toward the exit. Keisha stumbled, her bad ankle giving way again. She fell against the glass door, sliding down to the carpet. The pain in her stomach was sharper now, a cramping sensation that terrified her. "Please," Keisha gasped, looking up at the guard. I think I am going into labor. Please call an ambulance." The guard hesitated for a second, but Julian stepped forward. He loomed over her, blocking the light. "She is faking it," Julian told the guard, cold and dismissive. "She did the same thing last week to get out of a parking ticket. She is a pathological liar. Throw her out on the curb. If she wants an ambulance, she can call one from the street." "Julian," Keisha whispered, "it is your daughter. My daughter will be born to a woman with class." Julian spat. "Not you." He turned to Tiffany. "Come on, babe. The jet is ready. Let's leave this trash behind." Tiffany blew a kiss to the camera. Bye guys, stay tuned for the tour of the jet. The guard grabbed Keisha by the arm again, hauling her up with zero tenderness. He pushed her through the sliding doors out into the humid, sticky heat of the tarmac drop-off zone. Stay off the property, the guard warned, pointing a finger in her face. If I see you come back inside, I am calling the real cops, and you will give birth in a holding cell. Understand? The doors slid shut. Keisha was left standing alone on the concrete curb. No money, no husband, no dignity. Her phone battery was at 4%. Her ankle was throbbing, and her belly was tight with stress. She looked through the glass. She could see Julian and Tiffany laughing as they walked toward the tarmac doors. They looked like royalty. They had won. Or so they thought. Keisha reached into the hidden pocket of her dress. Her hands were shaking, but her mind was suddenly crystal clear. The tears stopped. The sadness evaporated, leaving only a cold, hard resolve. She pulled out a small black phone. Not her regular smartphone, a burner phone. Or at least it looked like one. It was a satellite-encrypted device, a direct line that bypassed regular networks. There was only one number saved in it. She pressed the call button. It rang once. Yes, Keisha, a deep baritone voice answered instantly. Dante. Keisha said, her voice cracking, not with sorrow, but with the release of power she had held back for too long. He did it. He signed the papers. And he hurt the baby. There was a silence on the other end of the line. A silence so heavy it felt like the temperature dropped 10 degrees. Where are you? Dante asked. Teterboro. North Gate. Look up, Dante said. Keisha looked up at the sky. Through the haze of the afternoon sun, she saw a glint of metal. A massive dark shape was descending, cutting through the clouds like a predator. It was not just a plane, it was a flying fortress. A Gulfstream G700 painted in matte black with a gold V on the tail. We are already here, little sister. Dante's voice was the sound of impending doom for anyone who had dared to touch her. And we brought the whole fleet. Stay put. The war has just arrived. Inside the cool, air-conditioned sanctuary of the VIP lounge, Tiffany was having the best day of her life. She held her phone up high, finding the perfect angle where the light hit her cheekbones just right. The little red number in the corner of her screen was ticking up so fast it was almost a blur. 3,000 viewers, 5,000, 10,000. People loved a villain, but they loved a train wreck even more. And right now, Tiffany was painting Keisha as the ultimate train wreck. Oh my God, you guys. Thank you so much for the support. Tiffany cooed into the camera, pouting her lips. I am literally shaking right now. I don't know how Julian dealt with her for 3 years. She is so unstable. She literally tried to claw my face off just because I am wearing the engagement ring she wanted. She flashed the massive diamond at the camera, and the screen exploded with emojis. Hearts, fire, laughing faces. Keisha, standing on the other side of the thick, soundproof glass, could not hear the words, but she could see the performance. She could see Tiffany laughing and pointing at her. But the real damage was happening in the comments section. It was a digital firing squad. User Lovely Lexi wrote, "Look at her dress. She looks like she wrapped herself in a bedsheet. No wonder he left." User Money Moves King typed, "She is just mad. She fumbled the bag. Secure the bag, Tiffany. That baby mama drama is toxic." User Fitness Freak commented, "You, look at her ankles. That is not pregnancy swelling, that is just lazy. He definitely upgraded." The comments scrolled by faster than anyone could read, but the sentiment was clear. The world was siding with the money. They were siding with the beauty filter. They saw a heavy, exhausted, dark-skinned woman in sneakers, and they saw a problem. They saw a young, light-skinned model in Gucci, and they saw a victim. It was not just the internet, though. The poison was spreading through the lounge itself. A man in a sharp gray suit who had been sipping scotch near the window stood up. He squinted at Julian, who was busy checking his emails, ignoring his ex-wife outside. The man's eyes widened with recognition. "Hey, excuse me," the man said, walking over to Julian. "Are you Julian Thorne?" "The CEO of Thorne FinTech." Julian looked up, putting on his best charming business smile. Guilty as charged. I knew it, the man said, shaking Julian's hand vigorously. I have been following your merger news all week. Brilliant stuff. Absolutely brilliant. Is that... He gestured vaguely toward the glass doors where Keisha was leaning against the wall, trying to rub her ankle. Is that the situation from the news? Julian sighed, playing the part of the long, suffering genius. Unfortunately, yes. Mental health issues are very real, my friend. We tried to get her help, but she refuses to take her medication. She just follows me around making scenes. It is tragic, really. The man shook his head, looking at Keisha with disgust. Unbelievable. You work hard, you build an empire, and you have to deal with that. Another woman, a wealthy heiress with a small dog in her purse, joined the conversation. She had been watching Tiffany's live stream over her shoulder. I saw her yelling at the security guard earlier, the woman said, wrinkling her nose. She was demanding he carry her bags or something. Total entitlement. It is like seeing a black Karen in the wild. The phrase caught on instantly. A black Karen, someone else laughed. That is exactly what she is. Thinking the rules do not apply to her just because she is pregnant. Tiffany heard them and her eyes lit up. She turned back to her phone. Did you guys hear that she whispered conspiratorially to her 20,000 viewers? Everyone here is terrified of her. They are calling her a black Karen because she was screaming at the manager demanding free upgrades. Can you believe the audacity? Keisha watched through the glass as the group of strangers formed a circle around her husband. They were laughing. They were clinking glasses. They were pointing their phones at her, filming the crazy woman outside in the heat. She was their entertainment. She was the zoo animal on display. She saw a teenager inside the lounge press his face against the glass and make a crying face, mocking her pain. He filmed a TikTok video with her in the background dancing while she held her stomach. The isolation was suffocating. It was not just Julian against her anymore. It was society. It was the wealthy elite who saw her poverty as a moral failing. It was the internet mob that judged her worth based on her dress size. She was screaming in a glass box, and the world was just laughing at the sound of her breaking heart. Mr. Henderson, the terminal manager, marched across the polished floor with the self-importance of a man who believed his job title made him a king. He took one look at the situation and made a calculation based entirely on bias. On one side stood Julian Thorne, a platinum member who dropped $50,000 on charters without blinking. On the other side was a distressed, pregnant black woman who looked like she did not belong in the same zip code as this airport. Henderson did not ask questions. He signaled to the 2 additional security officers standing by the X-ray machine. They were massive men with chests like barrels and faces void of empathy. They moved in flanking Keisha like she was a dangerous criminal instead of an exhausted mother-to-be. Mr. Thorne. I apologize for this disturbance, Henderson said, bowing slightly to Julian before turning a sneer toward Keisha. Ma'am, you have been asked to leave 3 times. Now we are done asking. I am waiting for my family. Keisha said, her voice trembling, but her chin held high. They will be here any minute. Please just let me sit down until they arrive. I am in pain. You can wait on the public sidewalk, Henderson spat. Boys, get her out. Use restraints if she resists. The 2 guards stepped into Keisha's personal space. The smell of their stale coffee and aggression filled the air. One of them unclipped a pair of zip ties from his belt. The sound of the plastic ratchet zipping was sharp and terrifying. Hands behind your back, the first guard barked, reaching for her wrist. I am pregnant, Keisha cried out, pulling her arm away instinctively. You cannot handcuff me behind my back. It is dangerous for the baby. Stop resisting, or we will take you down, the second guard warned, reaching for his taser. Keisha looked at Julian. He was the only one who could stop this. He was the man who had vowed to protect her. But Julian was not looking at her with concern. He was looking at her with boredom. He stood with his arms crossed, leaning against the check-in counter as if he were watching a boring television show. Julian, please, she begged. Tell them to stop. Hell. Julian inspected his fingernails. Just get it over with, he told the guards, his voice flat and cruel. Throw her out. If she struggles, drag her. If she gets hurt, do not worry about the medical bills. I will pay for the best lawyers money can buy to bury her in court. Just get this trash out of my sight before my flight leaves. Hearing her husband call her trash was the final blow to her heart, but the guard's hand on her shoulder was a blow to her reality. The guard did not wait. He shoved her. It was not a gentle guide toward the door. It was a hard physical push meant to dominate. Keisha's center of gravity was already off because of the baby. She stumbled back, her feet tangling. This time there was no chair to catch her. She hit the ground hard. A sharp, blinding pain ripped through her lower abdomen. It was not the ankle this time. It was deep inside. It felt like something tearing. Keisha gasped, clutching her stomach, curling into a ball on the cold, hard tiles. The world spun. "My baby," she whispered, tears streaming down her face mixed with sweat. "Something is wrong. She is faking it again." Henderson, the manager, groaned, rolling his eyes. "Pick her up." "No, do not touch me!" Keisha screamed a primal sound that made a few people in the lounge pause. "You are making a mistake. A huge mistake. You do not know who I am." Tiffany laughed, a high-pitched, cruel sound that cut through the tension. "We know exactly who you are, honey. You are a broke, desperate ex-wife who does not know when to quit." Keisha looked up through her tears. Her vision was blurry, but her voice was deadly serious. "My brothers are coming, and when they see this, they will burn this whole place down." The lounge erupted in laughter. It started with Tiffany, then Julian, then the manager, and finally the crowd of wealthy onlookers joined in. It was a chorus of mockery. "Your brothers?" Tiffany sneered, looking down at Keisha with pure disgust. "Who are they? Are they plumbing contractors? Do they drive delivery trucks? Did you call a gang of sanitation workers to come pick you up? Tell them to hurry because there is a lot of trash right here on the floor." Julian shook his head, chuckling. "You are pathetic, Keisha. Still trying to sound important. You have no one. You are nothing." The guard reached down, grabbing Keisha's arm to drag her across the floor like a sack of potatoes. But then the ground shook. It was not an earthquake. It was a vibration so powerful it rattled the champagne glasses on the bar. The laughter in the room died instantly. A low, deep rumble started outside, growing louder by the second. It was the sound of raw, unbridled power. The sound of 50,000 pounds of thrust screaming against the tarmac. Everyone turned toward the massive floor-to-ceiling glass windows. A shadow fell over the lounge. A plane was taxiing right up to the glass, ignoring all standard protocols. It was not a normal charter jet. It was a beast. A Gulfstream G700, black as midnight, with engines that sounded like the growl of a waking god. It turned sharply, its wingtips sweeping just feet from the window, causing the manager to jump back in fear. The roar of the engines was deafening, drowning out Tiffany's insults and Julian's arrogance. It was the sound of a predator arriving to claim its own. And as the massive turbine spooled down, the silence that followed was even more terrifying than the noise. The machine that ground to a halt outside the glass was not a standard white charter jet. It was a predator. A Gulfstream G700 painted in a custom matte black finish that seemed to absorb the sunlight rather than reflect it. It was massive. Its wingspan was so wide, it cast a long, dark shadow over the entire VIP lounge, eclipsing the small rented Citation jet that Julian had been bragging about just moments earlier. The sheer size of the aircraft was an insult to everyone else on the tarmac. It demanded space. It demanded attention. On the tail fin glistening against the black paint was a single letter. A stylized V plated in 24-karat gold. Inside the lounge, the silence was absolute. The mocking laughter that had filled the room 10 seconds ago had been sucked out by the vacuum of this arrival. Julian frowned, squinting through the glass. He adjusted his suit jacket, looking annoyed rather than impressed. "Who is blocking the gate?" Julian snapped, waving his hand dismissively. "Henderson, get on the radio. Tell that pilot to move. We have a departure slot in 15 minutes, and I am not waiting for some rapper's party plane to refuel." But Henderson, the airport manager, was not reaching for his radio. He was gripping the edge of the service counter, his knuckles turning white. His face had drained of all color, leaving him looking like a ghost. He was an aviation expert. He knew planes, and he knew exactly what was parked outside. "That is not a rapper, mister," Thorne Henderson whispered, his voice shaking. "That is a G700, the extended range model." "So what?" Julian scoffed. "It is just a plane." "No, sir." Henderson swallowed hard sweat beading on his forehead. "You do not understand. You cannot charter that plane. It is not for rent. That aircraft has a base price of $75 million and a 3-year waiting list. There are only 5 of them on the East Coast with that custom stealth configuration. Henderson's eyes locked onto the gold V on the tail. A flicker of recognition turned into pure terror. "That is the Vance family flagship," Henderson breathed. "That is the Vindicator. They own half the commercial real estate in Manhattan. They do not fly commercial, and they certainly do not wait for slots. They own the airspace." The manager looked from the terrifying black machine outside to the woman crying on the floor inside. He looked at Keisha's worn-out sneakers. Then he looked back at the gold V. The realization hit him like a physical blow to the gut. The resemblance, the eyes, the name on the credit card he had just rejected. Vance. Keisha Vance. "Oh my God," Henderson gasped. Outside, the jet engines began to power down with a high-pitched whine that sounded like a turbine spinning down from war speed. The hydraulic stairs began to unfold from the fuselage slowly and deliberately. It was theatrical. It was intimidating. Tiffany, oblivious to the shift in atmosphere, tapped her acrylic nails against the glass. "It looks like a Batmobile," she giggled nervously, trying to keep her live stream entertained. "Who paints a plane black? It is so extra." But nobody was laughing with her anymore. The energy in the room had shifted from mockery to a deep primal fear. The wealthy elite in the lounge knew the smell of new money versus old money. Julian was new money. He was loud, flashy, and rented. The black jet outside was old money. It was silent, permanent, and owned. Keisha stopped crying. She used the back of her hand to wipe her face. She did not look at Julian. She did not look at the manager. She looked straight at the black door of the plane. "They are here," she whispered to herself. For the first time since the ordeal began, Julian looked unsettled. He looked at the massive black wing that was literally hovering over his rented plane, making his aircraft look like a toy. He felt a cold shiver run down his spine, a primitive warning that he had just stepped into a cage with something much bigger and much meaner than himself. The hydraulic hiss of the cabin door opening was the only sound in the world. Slowly, the stairs lowered to the tarmac like a bridge connecting Olympus to the earth. First came the security detail. 6 men in matching tactical suits moved with military precision, forming a perimeter around the base of the stairs. They did not look like the rental mall cops inside the terminal. These men looked like Secret Service agents. They scanned the area with earpieces buzzing and hands hovering near concealed weapons. Then the family emerged. Dante Vance stepped out first. He was 40 years old and built like a linebacker who had transitioned into a boardroom predator. He wore a charcoal bespoke suit cut so sharp it looked like it could draw blood. He did not look around. He looked straight ahead with eyes that promised violence. Behind him came Malik Vance. He was the media tycoon, the face of the family empire. He adjusted his sunglasses, scanning the terminal building as if he were deciding whether to buy it or demolish it. Last of the brothers was Tyson Vance, the Harvard-educated shark. He carried a leather briefcase not with the weight of paperwork, but with the weight of judgments and sentences. But the person who commanded the most attention was the woman walking beside them. Sarah Vance, Dante's wife. She was a vision of ice-cold fury wrapped in white silk. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her heels clicked against the metal stairs like gunshots. She did not look like a woman coming for a vacation. She looked like a queen coming to an execution. Inside the glass walls, Mr. Henderson, the airport manager, felt his knees give way. He grabbed the counter for support. "It is them," Henderson whispered, his voice trembling so hard the nearby passengers could hear him. "That is the Vance dynasty. They own the skyline. They own the banks. They own half of New York." Julian frowned, confused by the manager's terror. He looked at the group walking toward the terminal. He saw the expensive suits. He saw the power. But his arrogance blinded him to the danger. He only saw opportunity. "Relax, Henderson." Julian scoffed, fixing his tie in the reflection of the glass. "They are probably just potential investors. I have been trying to get a meeting with Vance Capital for months. This is fate. They must have heard I was here." Julian turned to Tiffany, who was still filming, but looking uncertain. "Babe, make sure you get this angle," Julian commanded, putting on his best charming smile. I'm about to close the biggest networking deal of my life. Outside on the tarmac, the brothers did not stop for customs. They did not stop for security checks. The guards at the door simply stepped aside, bowing their heads as the entourage swept through the automatic doors. The air in the lounge changed instantly. The smell of expensive cologne and raw power filled the room. The three brothers walked in a phalanx, a triangular formation that parted the crowd of wealthy onlookers like the Red Sea. They did not look at the other passengers. To them, everyone else in the room was just furniture. Their eyes were locked on one thing: the woman sitting on the floor near the trash can holding her stomach. Julian, however, misread the room completely. He saw Dante Vance walking toward him and assumed the intense stare was a sign of business interest. Julian stepped forward, pushing his chest out, extending his hand for a handshake. "Mr. Vance," Julian said, his voice dripping with practiced charisma. "What an honor. I am Julian Thorne, CEO of Thorne FinTech. I believe your firm has been looking into my portfolio." Julian stood there, hand extended, waiting for the validation he craved. The brothers did not break stride. Dante Vance did not even blink. He walked right through Julian's personal space, forcing Julian to jump back to avoid a collision. It was not a rejection. It was total erasure. To Dante, Julian was less than a ghost. He was an obstacle to be stepped around. Malik and Tyson followed suit, their shoulders brushing past Julian with the force of a freight train, leaving him spinning in their wake. Julian stood there, hands still floating in the air, his smile freezing into a mask of confusion. The rejection was so absolute that a hush fell over the room. But Sarah Vance was not just walking past. She was on a mission. She moved faster than her husband, her eyes locking onto Keisha. When she saw the tears on Keisha's face and the way she was clutching her belly, the mask of cold indifference shattered. Keisha Sarah cried out, dropping to her knees on the dirty airport floor, heedless of her white silk pants. She ignored the gasps of the crowd. She ignored the dirt. She wrapped her arms around Keisha, pulling her close, protecting her from the staring eyes. "I have got you, sweetie," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling with rage and love. "I am here. We are all here." Keisha collapsed into her sister-in-law's arms, the relief breaking the dam of her composure. "They hurt me, Sarah." "He hurt the baby." Sarah pulled back gently, her hands checking Keisha's face, then her belly. Her eyes scanned the room and landed on the red mark on Keisha's ankle where the heel had dug in. Then Sarah stood up. The transformation was terrifying. The loving sister vanished. The avenging angel appeared. She turned slowly on her heel. Her blue eyes swept across the room and locked onto Tiffany. Tiffany was standing 10 feet away, phone still raised, still live streaming, although her hand was shaking now. She did not know whether to keep filming or run. "You think this is content?" Sarah asked, her voice low and deadly. Tiffany stammered, trying to find her influencer persona. "I am just documenting the truth. She attacked us." Sarah walked toward her. She did not rush. She stalked. "You are filming a member of the Vance family without consent," Sarah said, taking another step. "You are broadcasting the pain of a pregnant woman for likes." Sarah reached out. She did not ask for the phone. She snatched it. With a movement too fast for Tiffany to react, Sarah ripped the latest model iPhone from Tiffany's grip. She looked at the screen, seeing the thousands of hateful comments scrolling by. "This ends now," Sarah declared. She raised her arm and hurled the phone onto the marble floor. Smash! The sound was explosive. The glass screen shattered into a million sparkling diamonds. The device bounced once, twice, and then lay dead. Its lens cracked, its battery ejected. "My phone," Tiffany shrieked, looking at the wreckage of her digital life. "You crazy witch, that was $1,000. Sarah stepped over the broken plastic, getting right into Tiffany's face. She was shorter than the model, but in that moment she towered over her. "Your phone is the least of your problems," Sarah hissed. "You just assaulted the wife of a Vance. You just kicked an heir to our dynasty. By the time my husband is done with you, you will not be able to afford a payphone, let alone a replacement." The room was dead silent. The only sound was Julian's heavy breathing as the reality of the situation began to crash down on him like a falling building. He looked at the three brothers who were now standing behind Sarah, forming a wall of muscle and fury. He looked at Keisha, the woman he had called trash, and then he realized with a sickening lurch in his stomach that he had not just kicked his wife, he had kicked a hornet's nest the size of Manhattan. The air around Julian Thorne seemed to vanish. He was a man used to being the biggest shark in the tank, but now he realized he had been swimming in a puddle. The ocean had just arrived, and he was nothing but krill. The three Vance brothers did not yell. They did not scream. They did not have to. They simply moved. It was a coordinated predatory shift. Dante took the center position, his 6'4" frame blocking out the light from the terminal entrance. Malik moved to the left, cutting off Julian's path to the exit. Tyson, the youngest and sharpest, moved to the right, blocking the path to the gate. They formed a perfect triangle of containment, a prison made of bespoke Italian wool and cold fury. Julian took a step back, his expensive loafers squeaking on the polished floor. He bumped into the check-in counter. There was nowhere to go. He looked at Dante, expecting to see anger. But he did not see anger. He saw indifference. It was the look a man gives to a cockroach before he steps on it. Not hate, just pest's control. Julian cleared his throat. His Adam's apple bobbed nervously. He tried to summon the arrogance that had served him so well just 5 minutes ago. He tried to remember that he was a CEO, a man of importance. Mr. Vance, Julian said, his voice cracking slightly. He coughed and tried again. Mr. Vance, I believe there has been a terrible misunderstanding here. I am Julian Thorne. Perhaps you recognize the name. I am the founder and CEO of FinTech X. We are the fastest growing financial platform in the tri-state area. Julian paused, waiting for recognition, waiting for the respect he felt he was owed. Dante did not speak. He just tilted his head slightly to the side, his eyes drilling a hole through Julian's skull. The silence stretched out long and agonizing. It was a power move, a way of saying your words have no weight here. Desperate to fill the silence, Julian continued speaking faster now, his hands making nervous gestures. I assume you are here for business. I know my wife, or rather my ex-wife, has caused a scene. She is very emotional. It is the hormones. I was just trying to remove her so we could discuss potential synergies. I know Vance Capital is looking for aggressive tech investments, and I think FinTech X fits your portfolio perfectly. Julian smiled. It was a weak, trembling smile. He actually believed he could talk his way out of this. He believed that money trumped everything, even family. Then a sound cut through the air. A dry, humorless laugh. It came from Malik, the brother on the left. Malik took off his sunglasses, slowly folding them and placing them in his pocket. He looked at Julian with a mixture of amusement and pity. FinTech X. Malik repeated the name, tasting it like it was spoiled milk. You are the CEO of FinTech X. Yes, Julian nodded eagerly, seeing a lifeline. That is me. Malik took a step closer, invading Julian's personal space. That is funny, Malik said, his voice smooth but sharp as a razor. Because I was reading a report on my desk this morning. A distress call from a mid-sized tech company begging for a liquidity injection. Begging for a lifeline because they had burned through their operating cash and were 48 hours away from insolvency. Malik leaned in his face inches from Julian's. That company was FinTech X. You did not come to this airport to close a merger, Julian. You came to beg for money. You are not a tycoon. You are a beggar in a nice suit. And the only reason you are not bankrupt right now is because Vance Capital was considering buying your debt for pennies on the dollar. Julian's face went pale. The blood drained from his cheeks, leaving him looking gray and sick. The secret he had been hiding, the truth behind his flashy lifestyle and rented jet, lay exposed on the terminal floor. You saw the proposal? Julian whispered, his voice barely audible. We saw it. Dante finally spoke. His voice was like grinding stones, deep and terrifying. We saw a man who spends more on marketing than product. We saw a man who rents private jets he cannot afford to impress people who do not care. And now we see a man who kicks a pregnant woman to the curb to save his own ego. Dante took one massive step forward. Julian flinched, pressing his back against the counter. You thought you were a king, Dante rumbled. But you are just a liability, and we are about to liquidate you. Julian blinked rapidly, trying to process the information. He looked from the three imposing men in Italian suits to the woman he had just left on the floor. The math did not add up. His brain, which usually crunched numbers for a living, was failing him. "I do not understand," Julian stammered, his voice weak. "You are Vance Capital. I know who you are. But what does this have to do with Keisha? She is a librarian. She stamps books for $12 an hour. She does not know anything about finance." Tyson Vance, the youngest brother and the sharpest legal mind in New York, stepped forward. He placed his briefcase on the check-in counter and clicked open the gold latches. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the silent terminal. He pulled out a single document. It was bound in blue leather. "You really never looked past the surface, did you?" Julian, Tyson said, sliding the document across the counter. "You never wondered why a simple librarian never asked you for money. You never wondered why she never complained when you worked late. You thought she was simple. You thought she was beneath you." Tyson tapped the document with a manicured finger. "Keisha did not take your name when you married Tyson," revealed his voice, projecting to every corner of the room. "You were too busy talking about yourself to notice. Her name is Keisha Vance. She is not a librarian. She is the silent partner of Vance Capital. She owns 40% of the firm." Julian felt the room spin. 40%. That meant she was not just rich, she was a whale. And since Vance Capital holds the majority of your company's debt, Tyson continued delivering the final blow. That means she is not just your wife. She is your boss. She is your creditor. And she is the only reason your pathetic little app has not been shut down by the regulators yet. Julian looked at Keisha with wide, terrified eyes. "Why?" he whispered. "Why did you lie to me?" Keisha stood up. She did not need Sarah's help this time. She looked at the man she had loved for 3 years. "Because I wanted to be sure," Keisha said softly. "I have been rich my whole life, Julian. Men have always wanted me for my last name, for the connections, for the jet. I wanted someone who loved me for me. Just Keisha, not Keisha Vance." She touched her belly. "I gave you 3 years. 3 years to prove you were a good man. I gave you every chance to show kindness, to show loyalty. But today you showed me exactly who you are. You failed the test, Julian. And now class is dismissed." Tiffany saw the walls closing in. She watched Julian crumble like a stale cookie, and she knew she was next. The realization hit her that she was standing in the middle of a war zone, armed only with a fake tan and a bad attitude. She tried to make herself small. She took a step backward, moving slowly toward the automatic glass doors, hoping to slip away unnoticed while everyone was looking at Julian. Going somewhere. The voice was deep and vibrated in her chest. It was Dante. Tiffany froze. She looked up to see the eldest Vance brother staring at her. He was not looking at her face. He was looking at her feet, specifically the Gucci heels she was so proud of. He snapped his fingers. 2 massive bodyguards in tactical gear stepped in front of the exit, blocking the sunlight. Tiffany was trapped. Dante walked over to her. He moved with the terrifying grace of a panther. He stopped 2 feet away, invading her personal space. "I saw what you did," Dante said, his voice dangerously low. "I saw you kick her. I saw you put your foot on my sister while she was down." Tiffany trembled. It was an accident. I didn't mean to." Dante shook his head. "You like using your legs. You like kicking people when they are vulnerable." He pulled out his phone. It was a simple black device. "I am not going to hit you," Dante said coldly. "We do not touch trash. But you seem to be very proud of your career. You are a model, right? An influencer. You live off your image." He dialed a number and put the phone to his ear. Tiffany watched in horror. "Who are you calling?" she squeaked. Dante ignored her. "Yes, it is Dante Vance. I am looking at a girl named Tiffany. She is one of your talents, I believe." "Yes. She is currently abusing a pregnant woman in public." Dante paused, listening to the voice on the other end. "Here is what is going to happen," Dante said into the phone, never taking his eyes off Tiffany. "You are going to drop her. Now. And you are going to call every agency in New York, Milan, and Paris. Tell them if they hire her, Vance Capital pulls its funding from their fashion weeks. Tell them she is poison." He hung up. 30 seconds later, Tiffany's phone buzzed in her hand. Then it buzzed again. And again. Notifications were flooding in. Tiffany looked down at her screen. Contract terminated. Campaign canceled. Sponsorship withdrawn. She watched her life fall apart in real time. Her agency had just emailed her a termination notice. Her biggest sponsor, a skincare brand, had just tagged her in a post distancing themselves from her behavior. "What did you do?" Tiffany screamed, staring at Dante. "You ruined me." "I just gave you the attention you wanted," Dante said, turning his back on her. "You wanted to be famous, Tiffany. Now you are. You are the girl who kicked a Vance. Good luck finding a job that does not involve asking, 'Do you want fries with that?'" Tyson Vance reached down to the dirty airport floor. His hand, which usually signed billion-dollar mergers, now touched the wet-stained manila envelope that Julian had thrown at Keisha just 20 minutes ago. He picked it up. He dusted it off with a slow, deliberate motion that made Julian sweat. "You were in such a rush," Julian Tyson said, his voice calm and terrifying. "You were so eager to throw my sister away like garbage that you forgot the first rule of business. Always read the contract before you execute it." Julian tried to laugh, but it came out as a dry choke. "I know what is in there. My lawyers drafted it. It is a standard prenuptial agreement. What is mine is mine. What is hers is hers. Since she has nothing, she leaves with nothing." "Wrong," Tyson said. He opened the wet envelope and pulled out the divorce papers. He flipped through the pages until he found the section he was looking for. He smoothed the paper out on the counter. "You see," Julian Tyson continued, "when you married Keisha, you insisted on a very strict morality clause. You wanted to make sure she would never embarrass you. You were so paranoid that a girl from the library would ruin your reputation that you added a penalty for public infidelity." Julian froze. He remembered that. He had insisted on it because he thought Keisha would be the liability. He never imagined the gun would be pointed at him. But here's the thing about contracts. Julian Tyson smiled a shark-like grin. They work both ways. Tyson spun the document around so Julian could read it. He pointed to a small paragraph on page 14. Clause 7B, the protection of unborn heirs. "Read it," Tyson commanded. Julian squinted at the text. His hands began to shake violently. It says, Tyson read aloud for the whole room to hear, that if the primary earner commits an act of adultery that is public and verifiable during the spouse's pregnancy, then the prenuptial division of assets is void. Tyson looked over at the shattered iPhone on the floor where Tiffany had been live streaming just moments ago. "I would say 20,000 viewers on Instagram counts as public and verifiable, wouldn't you?" Tyson asked. Julian felt his knees buckle. He grabbed the counter to stay upright. No, that cannot be right. That means... It means," Tyson interrupted, his voice hard as steel, "that the penalty clause kicks in immediately. Upon proof of infidelity, 100% of the offending party's liquid assets and company equity are transferred to a trust for the unborn child." The room went dead silent. Even the air conditioning seemed to stop humming. Julian stared at the paper. The words were blurring together, but the meaning was clear. It means Tyson leaned in close, whispering the final death sentence. "You do not own FinTech X anymore, Julian. Your daughter does. And since she is not born yet and won't be 18 for a long time, her legal guardian controls the trust." Tyson pointed at Keisha, who was standing tall, protected by her brothers. "Meet your new boss, Julian. You just signed your entire company over to the woman you kicked." Julian looked at Keisha. The realization hit him like a physical blow. The millions in the bank, the stock options, the patents, the house, everything he had built, everything he had bragged about was gone. He had literally thrown it all at her feet when he tossed that envelope. "You are bankrupt," Julian Malik added from the side, checking his watch. "Actually, you are worse than bankrupt. You are unemployed. Because I am pretty sure the new majority shareholder is going to want to make some changes to the management team." Keisha stepped forward. She looked at the man who had been her husband. There was no hate in her eyes anymore, only pity. "You are fired, Julian," she said softly. "Get off my plane, and get out of my company." Julian Thorne, the man who thought he was a king, was now just a pile of expensive fabric on the floor. His legs had finally given out under the weight of his own hubris. He was on his knees, not in prayer, but in total, absolute defeat. He looked at the divorce papers scattered around him like fallen leaves. The ink on his signature was not even dry yet, and he had already lost everything. His company, his fortune, his wife, and his unborn child. The Vance brothers did not offer him a hand. They did not even offer him a second glance. To them, he was already part of the past, a bad investment that had been written off. Dante placed a protective hand on Keisha's shoulder. Sarah wrapped an arm around her waist, supporting her weight, taking the pressure off her injured ankle. Malik and Tyson flanked them, clearing a path through the debris of shattered glass and shattered egos. "Come on, little sister," Dante said, his voice gentle for the first time that day. "Let's go home. Mom is waiting." The group began to move. It was a slow, majestic procession. The crowd in the lounge, the same people who had laughed at Keisha 10 minutes ago, were now silent. They stared at their shoes. They stared at the walls. They were terrified to make eye contact with the woman they had mocked. They realized too late that they had bet on the wrong horse, and now they were scrambling to become invisible. But Keisha stopped. She was 10 feet away from the automatic doors, but she paused. She turned back one last time. She looked down at Julian. He was still kneeling, staring blankly at the floor. He looked small. He looked like a child who had broken his favorite toy and realized he could never fix it. Julian looked up. His eyes were red and wet. He looked at Keisha not with arrogance, but with a desperate, pleading realization of what he had thrown away. "Keisha," he croaked, his voice broken. "Please, I can change." Keisha shook her head slowly. It was not a gesture of anger. It was a gesture of finality. "You said something earlier," Julian, Keisha said, her voice carrying clearly across the silent room. "You told me I was an embarrassment. You said I did not fit in with your world. You said I did not belong in first class." She took a deep breath, inhaling the cool air of her freedom. "You were right," Keisha said. "I do not belong in commercial first class. I never did. That world is too small for me." She raised her hand and pointed through the glass wall. She pointed to the massive black Gulfstream G700 waiting on the tarmac. The engines were spooling up again, the heat haze shimmering around the gold V on the tail. "I belong on that," Keisha declared. She turned her back on him. She did not look back again. She walked through the automatic doors flanked by her brothers and into the heat of the afternoon. Julian watched them go. He watched his wife limp slightly as she walked up the red-carpeted stairs of the private jet. He watched the massive black door close with a heavy mechanical thud, sealing her inside a world of wealth and power he could only dream of. He watched as the engines roared to life, shaking the ground beneath his knees. He watched the plane taxi away, leaving him behind in the dust. He looked down at his hand. He was holding the velvet box with the engagement ring he had bought for Tiffany. He opened it. The diamonds sparkled under the fluorescent lights. It was a fake, just like him. 6 months is a long time in the world of business, but it is a lifetime when you are rebuilding your soul. In a sunlit nursery overlooking Central Park, Keisha Vance rocks her newborn daughter to sleep. The baby is healthy, beautiful, and safe. She is named Liberty, a reminder of the day her mother walked away from a cage and stepped into the sky. Keisha is no longer the quiet wife hiding in the shadows. She is now the president of the Vance Foundation. She uses her 40% stake in the family empire to fund legal defense for women who have been financially abused by their partners. The check and counter where she was once humiliated is now the site of a billboard campaign sponsored by her charity, reminding women that they are never alone. As for Julian Thorne, he did get a change of scenery, but it was not the tropical vacation he had planned. It turns out that when Tyson Vance audits a company, he does not just look for profit, he looks for crimes. The Vance brothers found them. Embezzlement, tax evasion, fraud. Julian traded his $5,000 Navy suit for a bright orange jumpsuit. He is currently awaiting trial in a federal detention center. His calls to Keisha go unanswered. The only person who visits him is his public defender, who tells him that the evidence is overwhelming. He sits in his cell, staring at the concrete wall, thinking about the woman he called trash. He realizes too late that she was the only thing of value he ever really had. And Tiffany, the girl who thought she was too good to be near a pregnant woman in sneakers, found out that the fashion industry has a very long memory. Blacklisted by every agency in New York and Paris, she had to find a new way to pay the rent. If you go to a certain diner in New Jersey near the highway, you might see her. She is not wearing Gucci anymore. She is wearing a stained apron and comfortable shoes because she is on her feet for 10 hours a day. She pours coffee for truck drivers and families. Sometimes when a customer is rude to her, she remembers the day she kicked Keisha. She remembers the sound of the phone smashing on the floor. And she keeps her head down, humble and silent. This story is not just about revenge. It is about recognition. It teaches us that you should never judge the person standing next to you based on their clothes or their silence. Julian made the fatal mistake of confusing silence with weakness. He did not know that Keisha's silence was not submission. It was grace. It was the quiet confidence of a woman who knows exactly who she is and does not need to shout to prove it. True power does not need to make a scene. True power protects. True power nurtures. And when pushed too far, true power simply calls in the jet and leaves you behind. What would you do if you found out the person you loved looked down on you? Would you stay and fight, or would you walk away like Keisha? Tell us your story in the comments below, because your voice matters. And do not forget to like and subscribe for more stories of justice served cold. Until next time, remember that the strongest people are often the ones you never see coming.